Okay, so hi, I'm Luiza. I made a casual game about genocide. I'll talk a little bit about the design of the game, but first I kind of want to talk about how it came to be and also why I took this approach and why I think it's a worthwhile approach taking this kind of more casual approach to serious themes and topics. So this is called Nagorno-Karabakh. It's a tiny little self-declared independent part of the world. It's populated by about 120,000 Armenians who are native to that region. Due to some kind of Soviet mishaps back in the day, the region is now fully within the borders of Azerbaijan. At the end of 2020, Azerbaijan launched a full-scale military attack against the Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh. The extent of this attack and the circumstances surrounding it and leading up to it led to a genocide emergency being declared for the Armenians of Nagorno-Karabakh. I'm Armenian, so this hit quite close to home, literally. Around this time, Luiza was coming up, and my musician friend, who I usually do these jams with, he called me up and was like, "Are we going to participate in it this time around?" And I thought, you know what? Okay, let's do it. But I don't care what the theme is. I want to do something based on whatever's going on back home. So luckily, the theme turned out to be Stuck in a Loop, which, if you know our history, you know that if anything is stuck in a loop, it is that. So I wanted to make a game about genocide itself, because genocide, if that isn't resolved, it also ends up perpetuating in an endless loop. So most of the games that have tried to kind of tackle this theme, they tend to be really heavy, like emotionally charged, interactive narratives, kind of interactive stories. And it's either that, or they tend to be, if they're not interactive fiction, they tend to be like genocide simulators almost. And I don't just mean like with like sci-fi and fantasy races, I mean like you play as Nazis or like white supremacists, which is not what I wanted to do. I did think about doing a kind of a fictional narrative, kind of interactive story that plays to play. But I think since like the start of the attacks, I just stopped being able to think in words. I kind of turned to abstract art instead. And so I thought, could I make an abstract game? Could I turn the mechanics of genocide into the mechanics of a game? I also had like the logistics of the jam to consider. So with game jams, and with Ludum Dare especially, you want people to play your game. You don't want there to be this kind of like emotional barrier for them to think that this is going to be like a really emotional experience. They need to have like the right level of emotional resilience to kind of even attempt to like press play on this game. I wanted something that could be a bit more lighthearted and just look like something fun to pick up and play. So I thought I would make a casual game. And I know that maybe some of you are thinking that, like, how dare she? Like, the words casual and genocide do not belong in the same sentence together. It's like, it's dismissive, it's disrespectful, and it's kind of minimizing. But I think that's why it's essential. It's like, genocide is one of those words that is too big to be real. It's so unimaginably enormous that ordinary people who have never been through one or experienced one, you cannot even fathom that one could be happening right now in this day and age, or that our governments could have anything to do with them. It's like, I noticed it a lot back in 2020, so a lot of Armenians took to social media to kind of raise awareness about what was going on. And it was like, as soon as he mentioned the word genocide, people get their backs up. It's like, they think that, okay, it can't be that. It might be maybe ethnic cleansing, it might be massacres, but it can't be genocide, surely not. Even in this talk, you might kind of have this like inner reflex thinking that like, I don't know, she must be using that word, it must be like something else. It's as though like the word itself is more horrific than the horrific acts that it describes. So I think it kind of needs to be knocked off of its podium and brought back down onto the plane of possibility. On the flip side of this, we have the word casual, where as soon as you call a game casual, it becomes somehow less of a game. It's as though like it's not worthy of consideration, it's a waste of time, despite the fact that millions of people pour hours of their time into casual games, despite the fact that they play these games when they're doing a million other things, their attention is completely fragmented, and yet they still know how to play the game. They still manage to like play it consistently. The game still manages to like infect their minds and like take over their dreams sometimes. And like a game like that, there is nothing casual about it. And that's the kind of game that I wanted to make. I wanted to make something that would be kind of more approachable to general audiences. And so I made Detachment Undone. And if you're sick of listening to me, you can follow the code and you can see like, you can play a little mobile version of the game. It's not like specifically technically a mobile version, it's just like the itch version that you can play on your phone. But maybe turn the sound down because there is music in it. So as it turns out, Genocide lends itself quite well to being turned into a game. It's not an act or an event, it's actually a 10-stage process. Each stage describes, it has kind of like an antagonistic circumstance or action or event that's going on within that society that enables the genocide to proceed. So, and these kind of start off as quite arbitrary things, but they soon escalate into what most people would consider genocide today. What's interesting though is that each stage also has like a counteraction to it. It has preventative measures that can be taken either by societies or individuals or governments to kind of stop that stage and prevent the genocide from progressing any further. So you have 10 stages, 10 levels, 10 antagonistic features, and the preventative measures that stop them. And I've only got about 5 minutes left, I think, so I won't go into every single one, but I will focus on stage 1 because that kind of establishes the baseline for the rest of the game. So stage 1 of Genocide is classification. That is simply the creation of an us and a them. Like, that is it. So it's like our group here and that group over there, like Mario fans and Zelda fans. And I'm using that last example as like a really arbitrary thing because these group differences don't need to be based on like anything real. So that's kind of what I wanted to use in this game. So we don't have any recognizable characters. There aren't kind of humans or like animals. We have circles. We have black and white circles and we have white and black circles. And you can decide for yourselves which is which because it is arbitrary after all. So the counter to this stage then is a kind of reclassification. It's about, instead of having these two separate groups, we have a third group that is like an all-encompassing group. And that sets up the basis for the entire game. You take one black and white circle and you add it to a white and black circle, and you create this larger group, which is both black and white and black. And then you keep dragging and dropping these pieces onto each other until you are left with like one super group at the end of the level, and that's how you win the level. And that is the basis for the game. So from level 2 onwards, we introduce traps. And these traps represent the kind of antagonistic elements of each stage. And for each trap, if a piece passes through the trap, they become affected by it. Different traps have different effects depending on the stage that they're at. And then when a piece has been affected by a trap, they are no longer groupable. And they need to be freed by other traps, no, not by other traps, sorry, by other pieces before they can be grouped again and before you can win the level. But now it's not enough to just create like one super group to win the level. You also need to defeat the traps because it's not enough to just be unified. You also need to destroy the systems that are kind of trying to like work against you. And then we also introduce a differentiation between the pieces at this stage. So instead of just being black and white or white and black pieces, they are now perpetrator pieces and victim pieces. Which is determined by your actions in level 1. So if you play the game a few times, you might see that like the roles reverse sometimes. But basically the idea is that some traps only work on perpetrator pieces, some traps only work on victim pieces, other traps work on both. So for example, for stage 4 or level 4, we have dehumanization. So in this case, it's decircleization. We have shape traps, which only work on the victim pieces. And if a piece passes through them, they turn from being a circle into a square, because in this world, some circles are not considered as circle as other circles. They're considered squares. In stage 5, we have organization. This is kind of where governments start creating secret police and militias that kind of target individuals of these victim groups. And so we have these militia traps, which work on perpetrator pieces. Once a perpetrator piece passes through them, they turn into a recruitee. And if they come into contact with a victim piece, that victim piece is disappeared. We don't know where they're at. We just know that they're gone and they're not coming back. And this is where it becomes possible to lose the game. So if you, for example, run out of victim pieces, or if you run out of free perpetrator pieces, and you have no group pieces remaining on the level, you lose. And so you need to play again. And then I'll let these other stages speak for themselves, because I don't have time to go through them all. But basically, yeah, so you can play and find out for yourselves. But the idea with this is that I didn't want to make a story in this game. I didn't want to tell a story. I wanted to kind of give players the opportunity to kind of experience each stage for themselves, to kind of like understand what they involve. I also wanted kind of for players to practice the actions of undoing each stage, of stopping each stage, because I feel like in a game like this, that's the most important thing to like, that's the action I want players to be repeating continuously. And because the fact is, genocide is a thing that can be stopped, and it's not just a thing that is like in our past, it's very much in our present.